Ambassador Li Minji stepped out of the transport shuttle and looked up at the massive crystal towers reaching into the purple sky of Nexus Prime. She had been to many worlds since humanity joined the galactic community 20 years ago. But the Galactic Council headquarters still took her breath away. The towers seemed to grow from the ground like frozen lightning, each one representing a different species that had found their way to the stars. Her assistant, Kim Do-yoon, walked beside, her carrying a briefcase full of diplomatic documents. His face showed the same nervousness that Minji felt in her stomach. Neither of them had expected this emergency meeting. The message had arrived on Earth just 3 days ago, marked with the highest priority codes. All council members must attend. Immediately, Minji read the message again on her tablet as they walked through the main entrance. No exceptions. The entrance hall was filled with beings from across the galaxy. Minji recognized most of them from her years as Earth's representative. There were the tall, blue-skinned Altarians with their graceful movements. The rock-like granite people moved slowly through the crowd, their heavy footsteps echoing off the crystal walls. Small furry creatures that looked like walking teddy bears chattered nervously in groups. But it was the Zeltharians that caught everyone's attention. These insect-like beings stood nearly 3 meters tall, their shiny black shells reflecting the light from above. They had 4 arms each, and their large compound eyes missed nothing. Minji had learned to read their body language over the years, and right now they looked very serious. A Zeltharian guard approached their group. "Ambassador Li Minji of Earth," he said in perfect English through his translation device. "You are to take your assigned seat immediately. The emergency session begins in 10 minutes. Minji and Do-yoon followed the guard through corridors lined with artwork from dozens of worlds. They passed paintings that seemed to move on their own, sculptures that hummed with inner music, and displays of technologies that humanity was still trying to understand. The main council chamber was enormous. It was built like an ancient amphitheater, with curved rows of seats rising up from a central platform. Each species had their own section, designed to accommodate their specific needs. The human section was small compared to most others, just 12 seats for the entire Earth delegation. As Minji took her seat, she looked around at the other representatives. Some species had been spacefaring for thousands of years. Others, like the mysterious Shadow Walkers, were so advanced that they barely acknowledged the existence of younger civilizations. Humanity was definitely among the newest members of this galactic community. The lights dimmed, and a massive holographic display appeared above the central platform. Speaker Krixtal of the Zeltharian Empire rose from his seat and walked to the center. His forearms moved in complex patterns as he began to speak. "Fellow council members," his translated voice filled the chamber. "We face a crisis that threatens everything we have built together. The hegemony has broken the peace treaties. They have invaded 3 star systems in the past month, destroying everything in their path." The holographic display changed to show star maps. Red markers indicated the invaded systems, while yellow showed hegemony fleet movements. Minji studied the patterns with growing concern. The hegemony was a coalition of aggressive species that had been contained on the galaxy's outer rim for decades. If they were moving inward, it meant they had grown much stronger. "The hegemony fleet consists of over 2,000 warships," Krixtal continued. "They have new weapons, new shields, and new allies. Intelligence reports suggest they plan to capture the Nexus trade routes within 6 months. Murmurs of concern rippled through the chamber. The Nexus trade routes were the economic heart of galactic civilization. If the hegemony controlled them, they could starve entire worlds into submission. Therefore, Krixtal's voice grew louder, the Zeltharian Empire calls for immediate military action. All council members must contribute ships, troops, and resources according to their abilities. This is not a request. It is a requirement of council membership. The holographic display now showed fleet compositions from various species. The Altarians had promised 50 warships. The granite people would contribute their famous ground assault forces. Even the small furry folk offered their advanced medical ships. When the display reached Earth's section, Minji's heart sank. The numbers looked pathetic compared to the others. Humanity had only been building interstellar warships for 15 years. Their entire space navy consisted of 27 vessels, most of them explorers and cargo ships converted for military use. The human contribution, Krixtal announced, will be 3 destroyer-class vessels and 2,000 ground troops. Deployment must be completed within 1 galactic standard month. Minji stood up slowly. Protocol required her to acknowledge the assignment, but something felt wrong about this whole situation. Honored speaker, she said carefully. Earth appreciates the seriousness of this threat. However, we would like to review the intelligence reports before committing our forces. Our people deserve to understand what they're fighting for. The chamber fell silent. Several species turned to stare at the human section. In 20 years of membership, Earth had never questioned a council decision. Krixtal's compound eyes focused on Minji. His mandibles clicked together in what she had learned was either amusement or irritation. Young species, he said, his tone suggesting he was speaking to a child. This is not a debate. The council has made its decision. All members will comply according to their capabilities. Around the chamber, other representatives nodded their agreement. The vote was called immediately without further discussion. 46 species voted in favor of the military action. Only Earth abstained, not daring to vote against the overwhelming majority. As the session ended and representatives began filing out, Minji felt a cold weight settling in her stomach. Something about this situation reminded her of old Earth history, of larger powers using smaller nations as expendable pawns in their games of conquest. She looked at Do-hyun, who was already calculating ship assignments and troop deployments. Send a message to Earth Command, she told him quietly. Tell them we're going to war, but we need to be very careful about why. Captain Park Jin-ho stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable and watched the tactical display with growing worry. 3 small human ships floated in space near the planet. Kepler 442, looking tiny next to the massive alien warships around them. The Zeltharian dreadnoughts were each the size of a city block, their black hulls covered in weapon ports and shield generators. The sleek Vorthak cruisers moved like silver fish through space, their energy weapons glowing blue along their sides. Captain, his communications officer Lee Yuna called from her station. Admiral Thexana is giving us our orders. The main screen flickered, showing the insect-like face of the Zeltharian fleet commander. Her compound eyes reflected the bridge lights as she spoke through the translation system. Human vessels, she said in a tone that suggested she was giving orders to children. You will escort the civilian evacuation ships. Stay close to the planet and do not engage enemy forces unless directly attacked. Leave the real fighting to the experienced warriors. Jinho kept his face calm, but inside he felt angry. The 3 human ships, Indomitable, Defiance, and Vigilant, had some of the best trained crews in Earth's small navy. Their captains had studied every available record of space combat, and their weapon systems were actually more advanced than most alien designs, but the Zeltharians treated them like beginners who might get in the way. Understood, Admiral, Jinho replied politely. We'll protect the evacuation ships. The screen went dark, and Jinho turned to his tactical officer, Cho Minsu. What do you think of their battle plan? Minsu shook his head. It's terrible, sir. They're spreading their forces too thin, and they're putting all their heavy ships in the front line. If the enemy breaks through the center, the whole formation will collapse. That's what I thought too, Jinho said quietly. He had learned not to offer tactical advice to alien commanders. They seemed to think humans were too young and inexperienced to understand real warfare. 3 hours later, the hegemony fleet arrived. They came out of hyperspace like angry hornets, their red and orange ships bristling with weapons. Jinho counted. Over 60 enemy vessels, including several massive battleships that dwarfed even the Zeltharian dreadnoughts. The enemy formation was tight and professional, nothing like the scattered approach the defending fleet had expected. All stations, battle alert, Jinho called. Around him, his crew moved to their combat positions with smooth efficiency. They had drilled for this moment countless times, but none of them had ever been in a real space battle. The first exchange of fire lit up space like a fireworks display. Massive energy beams lanced between the fleets, and the first explosions, began. Jinho watched in horror as a Zeltharian dreadnought simply vanished in a ball of white fire. The defensive formation was already beginning to bend under the enemy assault. "Captain," Yuna reported, "the Zeltharian flagship is ordering all ships to fall back to secondary positions." "Already?" Cho Min-soo couldn't hide his surprise. The battle just started, but Jinho could see what was happening on the tactical display. The hegemony had brought more ships than expected, and their weapons were more powerful than the intelligence reports had suggested. The defending fleet was being pushed back faster than anyone had planned. "Sir," his sensor operator Park Sun-mi called urgently, "I'm detecting a squadron of enemy fighters breaking away from the main battle. They're heading toward the evacuation ships." Jinho looked at the display and felt his blood turn cold. 12 fast attack ships were racing toward the slow-moving transports that carried civilian refugees from the planet below. The ships were full of families, men, women, and children from several different species who had been living peacefully on Kepler 442 until the war started. "Where are their escorts?" he asked. "The Zeltharian cruisers assigned to protect them are pulling back. With the main fleet," Sun-mi reported. "The transports are defenseless." Jinho stared at the screen for a moment that felt like hours. His orders were clear: stay back and avoid major combat. But those transport ships contained thousands of innocent people, including human colonists, who had made Kepler 442 their home. "Communications. Get me the other human ships," he ordered. Captain Nam Ji-won of the Defiance and Captain Oh Sung-min of the Vigilant appeared on split screens. Both looked as angry as Jinho felt. "You seeing this?" Nam asked. "Those fighters will reach the transports in 8 minutes, Oh reported. "The civilians can't defend themselves." Jinho made his decision. "All human ships intercept course. We're not letting them get to those families." "Sir," Yuna said carefully, "Admiral Thexna ordered us not to engage unless directly attacked." "Those are innocent people," Jinho replied firmly. "I don't care what the Admiral ordered." The 3 human destroyers broke formation and raced toward the incoming enemy fighters. They were vastly outnumbered, 3 ships against 12, but they had advantages the enemy didn't expect. Human ships were built for speed and maneuverability, and their weapons could fire faster than most alien designs. The first enemy fighter exploded in a flash of orange fire as the Vigilant caught it with a perfect shot. The Defiance rolled sideways and took out 2 more with a spread of missiles. The Indomitable dove under the enemy formation and fired upward, her beams cutting through enemy hulls like knives through paper. But the hegemony fighters were experienced warriors. They adapted quickly to human tactics and began working together to isolate the 3 destroyers. The Defiance took heavy damage, protecting a transport full of alien children. When her weapons failed, Captain Nam made a choice that would be remembered forever. She rammed her ship directly into the largest enemy cruiser, destroying both vessels in a massive explosion. The Indomitable lost her main engines but kept fighting with maneuvering thrusters. The Vigilant fought alone for 27 minutes after the other ships were disabled, dancing through space like a deadly ballet while the last transports escaped to safety. When the battle finally ended, only the Vigilant was still able to fight. But every single civilian transport had made it to hyperspace safely. Not one innocent life had been lost. As rescue ships arrived to collect survivors, Jinho floated in his damaged command chair and thought about what they had accomplished. They had saved thousands of lives, but the cost had been terrible. Good friends were dead, and Earth's small fleet was now even smaller. He wondered if the Zeltharians would consider it worth the price. Captain Park Jinho sat in the white medical chair, his left arm wrapped in a strange alien device that was slowly rebuilding his damaged bones. The regeneration sleeve hummed softly as it worked, but Jinho barely noticed it. His mind kept going back to the battle, to the friends who didn't make it home. Across from him sat Admiral Thexna of the Zeltharian Empire. Her forearms moved in small patterns as she read through battle reports on a holographic display. Her compound eyes showed no emotion as she reviewed the numbers. Ships lost, lives saved, tactical decisions made. "Your species performed adequately," she said finally, her translated voice flat and cold. The tactical decision to engage 12 enemy fighters with only 3 ships was completely illogical. Any reasonable commander would have stayed back and followed orders. Jinho felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his face calm. "We saved 3,000 civilian lives, Admiral, including families with children." "Yes, quite touching." Thexna's mandibles clicked together. However, the losses were significant. 3 ships destroyed or damaged for 1 minor engagement. This is not sustainable for a species with such limited resources. She turned off the holographic display and looked directly at him. Perhaps human forces would be better suited to support roles in future operations. Logistics, medical support, technical maintenance. These positions would better match your capabilities. The insult hit Jinho like a physical blow. His crew had fought with incredible bravery against impossible odds. Captain Namjiwan had given her life ramming an enemy cruiser to protect innocent children. Captain Oh Seung-min had held off an entire squadron alone, and this alien commander dismissed it all as adequate. "Our crews fought with honor," Jinho said carefully. "They gave their lives protecting people who couldn't protect themselves." "Bravery is admirable in support personnel," Thexna replied. "The Empire has great need for dedicated service members. In non-combat roles, your emotional attachment to civilian casualties could be useful in medical support positions." Jinho realized that arguing would be pointless. Admiral Thexna had already decided that humans were too weak and emotional for real military service. Nothing he said would change her mind. Over the following months, the pattern became clear. Human forces were given the most dangerous assignments with the least support. When other species needed someone to assault a heavily defended position, they sent humans. When a mission required soldiers who might not come back, humans were volunteered. The Battle of Rigel Station was the worst example. Human Marines were ordered to attack a hegemony fortress while Zeltharian forces provided support from orbit. The fortress sat on top of a mountain, surrounded by energy shields and automated weapon systems. Intelligence reports said it was impossible to take by direct assault. Colonel Kim Mi-kyung led 800 human Marines in the landing operation. They used small dropships to get through the enemy shields, then had to fight their way up the mountain on foot. The hegemony defenders had been waiting for them, and the battle turned into a nightmare of explosions and laser fire. The support from the Zeltharian fleet consisted of occasional bombing runs that seemed more interested in destroying the fortress than protecting the humans attacking it. Several times, friendly fire from Allied ships nearly killed more Marines than enemy weapons, but the humans kept fighting. They used tactics that other species found strange: small unit operations, individual initiative, soldiers making their own decisions instead of waiting for orders. Slowly, step by step, they fought their way up the mountain. When the fortress finally fell, only 300 of the 800 Marines were still able to fight. The others were dead, wounded, or missing, but they had accomplished what 3 previous attacks by superior alien forces had failed to do. The victory celebration was held on a Zeltharian ship, with no human representatives invited. The credit for taking Rigel Station went to the fleet commander who had provided tactical support from orbit. The human Marines who had actually done the fighting were mentioned only as auxiliary forces in the official reports. Ambassador Lee Minji sat in her office aboard the diplomatic ship Concordia, reading casualty reports that made her feel sick. The numbers were getting worse with each battle. Earth's military was small to begin with. They couldn't keep losing people at this rate. But what worried her most was the pattern she was starting to see in the intelligence data. Her assistant, Kim Do-yoon, had been analyzing communication intercepts and battle assignments for weeks. What he found was disturbing. "Look at this," he said, bringing up a holographic map showing human deployments. "Every single high-risk mission has been assigned to human forces. Meanwhile, Zeltharian and Vorthak units get safer assignments with better support." Minji studied the data. It could be coincidence. Maybe they think we're better at difficult operations. "That's not all," Do-hyun continued. He showed her intercepted communications between alien commanders. "They're calling us expendable assets and useful shock troops. There are references to solving the human problem through battlefield attrition. The words hit Minji like cold water. They're trying to get us all killed. It gets worse, Doyun said quietly. The war itself isn't what we were told. The Galactic Council isn't just defending against hegemony expansion. They're using the conflict to settle old territorial disputes, eliminate rival species, and redistribute power among the major civilizations. Minji stared at the evidence in front of her. Trade route seizures that benefited Zeltharian corporations. Resource-rich worlds liberated and then occupied by Council forces. Entire species being forced to relocate to make room for Allied expansion. They're not fighting a defensive war, she realized. They're fighting a war of conquest, and they're using human blood to do it. That night, Minji sent an encrypted message to Earth. The message was simple but urgent. We've been betrayed. The Alliance is a trap. Recommend immediate review of all military commitments. She looked out the window of her ship at the stars beyond, wondering how many human soldiers were dying at that moment for causes that had nothing to do with protecting Earth or defending innocent people. The war was far from over, but for Minji, everything had changed. Earth needed to know the truth about their so-called allies before it was too late. Admiral Kim Soo-jin was reviewing supply reports when the emergency message arrived at 0347 ship time. The red priority code made her computer screen flash urgently, and the sound alert woke half her bridge crew from their sleep shifts. She opened the message with tired eyes, expecting another routine deployment order. What she read made her blood turn cold. All human naval forces are hereby ordered to proceed immediately to Zerion Prime for Operation Final Strike. Human fleet will lead the assault on the hegemony homeworld. Departure required within 72 hours. No delays acceptable. Soo-jin stared at the message in complete disbelief. Zerion Prime was the most heavily defended world in known space. It had 12 orbital defense platforms, each one bigger than a city. The planet's surface was covered with weapon systems that could shoot down entire fleets. 3 previous Council attacks had been completely destroyed trying to get close to the planet, and now they wanted her to lead 24 human ships in what could only be described as a suicide mission. She called her senior staff to the conference room aboard the UES Constitution. The meeting was scheduled for 0400, but officers began arriving early. Word had already spread through the ship that something big was happening. Captain Choi Minho from Intelligence was the first to speak. Admiral, I've been analyzing this order and something doesn't make sense. Why would they send us alone? Previous attacks used hundreds of ships and still failed. What's the official reasoning? Asked Captain Lee Soo-young, commander of the Destroyer Freedom. Soo-jin activated the holographic display and read the justification. Recent intelligence suggests that human tactical flexibility may succeed where conventional approaches have failed. Human forces have demonstrated superior performance in unconventional combat situations. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what those words really meant. The Council hoped that human desperation might accomplish what superior alien technology could not. It's a death sentence, said Commander Park Ji-hoon quietly. They're sending us to die. Captain Choi stood up and activated his own display. It's worse than that. I've been monitoring Council communications for weeks and I've found a pattern that's very disturbing. The holographic map showed human force deployments over the past year. Red markers indicated battles where humans had been assigned the most dangerous missions. Yellow showed casualty rates compared to other species. The pattern was clear and terrible. Human forces have been given high-risk assignments in 87% of operations, Choi explained. Our casualty rates are 3 times higher than any other Council species. This isn't coincidence. He brought up intercepted communications between alien commanders. The translated text appeared in the air above the table, and Soo-jin felt sick as she read it. The human problem continues to grow. Their rapid technological advancement threatens established power structures. Their diplomatic influence exceeds their military contribution. Recommend increased battlefield exposure to reduce long-term political complications. Another message was even more direct. Human forces are useful for high-risk operations due to their emotional attachment to civilian protection. Suggest continued deployment in expendable roles until population reduction reaches acceptable levels. The conference room was completely quiet. Everyone understood what they were reading. The Galactic Council had decided that humanity was becoming too successful, too influential, too dangerous to the established order. The war was being used as an excuse to eliminate Earth's growing power. "They're not just using us as shock troops," Admiral Sujin said slowly. "They're trying to commit genocide through military assignments." Captain Lee looked at the star charts showing the route to Zerion Prime. "If we follow this order, none of us will come back. Even if we somehow survive the attack, they'll find another suicide mission for us next month." "What are our options?" asked Commander Park. Sujin studied the faces around the table. These were good officers, people who had sworn to protect Earth and serve the Alliance. But the Alliance had betrayed them in the worst possible way. "We could refuse the order," she said carefully. "But that would mean breaking our treaty obligations and probably starting a war with the Council. Or we could follow orders and die fighting an enemy that's not really our enemy." Captain Choi pointed out. "While the real threat to humanity sits safely in the Council chambers." Sujin made a decision that would change everything. "Send a message to all human ships in the fleet. Emergency conference in 2 hours. Full encryption, no alien observers." The meeting that followed was unlike anything in Earth's military history. 24 ship captains gathered virtually from across the star system, their faces grim as they reviewed the evidence of Council betrayal. Some were angry, others were scared, but all of them understood what was happening. "The question is simple," Sujin told them. "Do we follow orders and die for people who want us dead? Or do we go home and protect our own people?" The vote was unanimous. Every captain chose to return to Earth, but first they needed to send a message that the galaxy would never forget. "Begin preparations for departure," Sujin ordered. "But before we leave, I want every ship to run full sensor sweeps of the area. Download every piece of intelligence we can find about Council fleet movements, weapon systems, and defensive positions. If they want to make us enemies, they should know exactly what kind of enemy they're creating." Over the next 24 hours, the human fleet gathered information that would have taken the Council's intelligence services months to collect. Advanced human sensors mapped defensive installations, recorded communication frequencies, and analyzed weapon signatures from dozens of alien ships. When they finally turned toward Earth, they carried with them complete tactical profiles of every species that had betrayed them. The Council had wanted to eliminate the human problem through warfare. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous: an angry Earth that now knew exactly how to defend itself. The long journey home gave Sujin plenty of time to plan what would happen when they reached the Galactic Council headquarters. The aliens had made one critical mistake in their calculations. They had assumed that peaceful humans would always remain peaceful, even when threatened with extinction. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. The human fleet arrived, at Nexus Prime like thunder in a clear sky. Admiral Kim Sujin stood on the bridge of the UES Constitution, watching the massive space station grow larger on the main screen. Behind her ship, 23 other human vessels moved in perfect formation, no longer the small scattered force that had first answered the Council's call for help, but something entirely different. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Yu Jisoo, "from communications, the Council is demanding to know why we're not at Zerion Prime. They're ordering us to leave immediately and follow our original mission orders." "Tell them we're here for an emergency session," Sujin replied calmly. "Full diplomatic protocols. They can't refuse a formal request from a Council member." She turned to Captain Park Jin-ho, who had recovered from his injuries and was now serving as her tactical advisor. "Are our ships ready?" "Yes, Admiral. All weapons powered down, but shields and engines at full capacity. If they try anything, we can defend ourselves or leave quickly." Sujin nodded. The human fleet wasn't here to start a fight, but they weren't helpless anymore either. The months of warfare had taught them hard lessons about survival in a hostile galaxy. The transport shuttle carried Sujin Park and Ambassador Lee Minji to the Council chambers. As they walked through the crystal corridors, alien beings stopped to stare at them. The humans looked different now, harder, more confident, with the bearing of people who had seen too much combat. The emergency session was packed. Representatives from all 47 council species filled the amphitheater, their voices creating a buzz of nervous conversation. Many had heard rumors about the human fleet's unexpected arrival, but no one knew what to expect. Speaker Crixtal of the Zeltharian Empire stood at the central platform, his forearms moving in agitated patterns. "Admiral Sujin," he called out, as the humans entered. "You were ordered to assault Zarian Prime. Your failure to comply with direct orders is—" Silence. The single word cut through the chamber like a knife. Sujin's voice carried absolute authority, the tone of someone who had commanded ships in battle and watched friends die for lies. The Zeltharian speaker actually stopped talking, his compound eyes focusing on her in surprise. Sujin walked to the center of the amphitheater, her footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. "For 8 months, you have used my people as expendable weapons. You have sent human soldiers into suicide missions while your own forces stayed safely behind. You have sacrificed our lives for territorial gains that benefit only your empires." She activated a holographic display showing detailed battle analyses. Every high-risk assignment went to human forces. Every desperate assault, every hopeless defense, every mission that other species considered too dangerous, you gave them all to us. Murmurs of protest began to rise from various sections, but Sujin continued without pause. "We intercepted your communications. We know about your discussions of the human problem. You thought this war would solve that problem for you by getting us all killed." Ambassador Lee stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "The Terran Federation hereby withdraws from all military operations under Council authority. We will no longer participate in your wars of conquest disguised as defense." "You cannot simply abandon your obligations," protested the Altarian representative, her blue skin darkening with emotion. "The Council voted all members must contribute." "The Council voted to deceive and eliminate an ally," Captain Park interrupted, his scarred face showing no emotion. "That alliance is now terminated." Sujin moved to the exact center of the amphitheater, commanding attention from every delegate. "You wanted to see what humans could do in war. You've seen our courage, our sacrifice, our willingness to die protecting innocent civilians. But you made one critical error in your calculations." She paused, letting her words sink in before delivering the message that would reshape galactic politics forever. "You assumed we would always be the victims in your schemes. You forgot that the same species willing to die for others would be equally capable of protecting ourselves. You've seen human compassion and human sacrifice. You haven't yet seen human anger." The holographic display shifted, showing images that made several alien representatives gasp in shock. Earth's orbital shipyards had tripled in size during the war. New weapon technologies, developed from studying alien designs, showed capabilities that matched or exceeded anything the Council possessed. Resource extraction from the asteroid belt had increased by 500%. Most shocking of all, Earth's population was mobilizing for total war production. "In 8 months of conflict, you taught us everything we needed to know about galactic warfare," Sujin explained. "Every battle you sent us to, every weapon you used against us, every tactical mistake you made, we learned from all of it. You wanted to eliminate the human problem, but instead you created something far more dangerous." She gestured to the display showing the human fleet in orbit above them. "We're returning to Earth. We'll defend our own territory and our own interests. We'll protect our colonies and our trade routes. And we'll remember exactly who tried to destroy us." The chamber fell completely silent. Every alien representative understood the implications of what they were seeing. Humanity had entered the galactic community as peaceful newcomers seeking friendship and cooperation. The Council's betrayal had transformed them into something entirely different. "As for the rest of you," Sujin said, her voice carrying a warning that would echo through diplomatic channels for decades to come. "Remember this moment. Don't drag humans into your wars, because next time, you might not like which side we choose." The human delegation walked out of the amphitheater in perfect formation, leaving behind a council that suddenly realized they had created their own worst nightmare. Outside in space, the human fleet turned toward home, carrying with them the knowledge and technology needed to defend Earth against any threat. The war with the hegemony would continue for 3 more years, but it would continue without human involvement. And every species in the galaxy would remember the day they learned that turning friends into enemies was the most dangerous mistake they could make. As the human ships disappeared into hyperspace, Speaker Krixtal looked around the chamber at his fellow council members. "What have we done?" he asked quietly. But it was too late for regrets. The galaxy had a new power to reckon with, and humanity would never trust the council again.